Welcome back to the Relentless Growth Podcast with myself, Chase Calhoun, and my good friend, Jack Maher. How are you doing this morning, sir?
Doing great. Excited for this episode. I'm excited to learn something here.
Nice. We've talked about this a little bit before, but we're going to do kind of an update on AI, how we're using it, and then one kind of cool tool that I've utilized, and I don't think you have yet. And so we can kind of just talk through it. Before we get started, or before we dive into it, let's get started how we normally do with some updates and wins. What's going on in your world?
Yeah, absolutely. It's been busy over here. So just for a little background, everybody, Jack Maher with John Maher Builders. It's a family business here. We're in Spring Hill, Tennessee. We're about 30 minutes south of Nashville, and we build single family and multifamily. And so right now we're building multifamily. And so one of the wins this week is we started a landscape maintenance crew probably a year and a half ago. And so we've got about a 10-man team that maintains all the properties. And then just recently, we've started doing our own irrigation and our own landscape install on the new side. And so those guys have done a tremendous job. They're scaling up, they're learning. And so they just did their first building of irrigation not too long ago. And it's like seeing a well-organized electrical panel. Like, it's just satisfying. Like, they do a really good job of laying it out, of labeling it, of knowing where things are. And so it's something that I have very little to do with, but it's very impressive to see. And so that's a win. That's something that a couple of years ago I would have never guessed that we'd be doing. But it's something that it makes our life easier. We know where things are later. It's a better system. And also, as a fringe benefit, we save a little bit of money. And so that's a big win for us right now, is that landscape crew is really doing great.
Nice. That's awesome. Again, for those that are maybe tuning in for the first time or don't know, I'm out of Central Arkansas. So I own a construction real estate investment company. We do a lot of single family and small multifamily, although we'd love to get into some bigger multifamily one of these days. It's just hard to find those kind of deals. And it's definitely hard to get them passed through cities. But a big win for us. We just finished our quarterly. So we run US just like you guys do. And so we just had a quarterly yesterday. So it was great. We did some goal and rock setting for the quarter and kind of through the end of the year. And so it's just nice to get with the team and get a clear picture for kind of where we're heading through the end of the year.
That's great. Yeah. We actually just finished one as well. And so you get a great feeling coming off of those. They're powerful.
Yeah, no, they definitely are. Cool. Well, let's jump into it. One of the things that popped up and something that I utilize that you haven't yet, and I think is worth discussing, is what I personally call like my power board. And it's using AI. And so a good friend of mine kind of, I guess, shared this with me, and it was several months ago that I kind of did it, but you can basically I use ChatGPT, and you can create a board of directors, like a personal board of directors, or it could be used in a business sense, but, and you can ask AI, you can kind of create that within AI and save it as an agent, I guess, or as a folder. And you can identify who you want on that board, and they can, as long as they have like published, enough published information out there. So like books or articles or podcasts or whatever, they don't even have to be alive. It could be somebody from history that's since passed. And so, but you can create that board, and once you save it, you can lean on that board and run stuff by it. So I called mine my power board, and I kind of had ChatGPT ask me some questions to identify who I wanted on there. But I use it all the time. Like when I'm working on something business wise, like I may be working through an exercise on how I want to solve a problem or move forward with something, then I can kind of stop and say, hey, run this by my power board and get input from each one of them, how they would handle the situation, or if they have input on it, or what changes they would make. And it'll spit it out like in the guys, like some of them I listen to often, like on podcasts and stuff. So you get a sense for kind of the personality and how you might think they would answer questions. And it's a little bit eerie how well the AI does in mimicking that. And so it can give you real, like, tangible advice, and you can ask it to make real changes and stuff. So that's the long and short of it. There's different ways you can do it. Sometimes if I don't want to hear what each person would have said, I would just say, ask have the power board review this, give input, and then agree, like come to a consensus on what changes they would make, or what recommendation they would make, or what next step they would make. And so it's pretty wild. I've heard of guys who are like in a corporate setting and they'll have something set up like this. And before they go present in front of their actual board, they'll say, hey, I'm going to go present in front of my actual board. Here's what I'm going to be presenting. If you were the board, what am I missing? What should I be aware of? Like kind of prep me to go into this meeting. And so it's another really interesting way to utilize AI that I think is pretty powerful.
I love that. That's something that I've heard about a little bit before this call, but I really haven't done myself and I haven't dug into. And I think it tails really interestingly into something that my, whatever you want to call it, life business coach and I were talking about on our last call last week. We were talking about something he calls character trait integration, where it's very akin to this concept of a lot of times I don't handle situations like I would like to. Or like looking back, you're like, man, I wish I would have handled that a little bit more like X or Y. Or, uh, man, I bet Elon would handle this exact scenario a lot different. And so, like, the concept we were talking about was like identifying those traits and then kind of putting yourself in the mindset of that person for a conversation or for a time for thinking and like, hey, what would they do with this situation? And so I think the AI and that board plays really powerfully into this because it's kind of like a jump start of, hey, here's a situation, how would X, Y, and Z handle it? And so it gives you a lot of insight into their mind, what they would do, and it really lets you. It's really, I think it's a hack of, hey man, I can pull from, you know, an hour of time with Elon would cost you, I mean, tens of millions of dollars probably if
Yeah.
we're willing to give it up, and so you can capture that time and that knowledge, in a matter of seconds. And so I think that's really powerful. And I think one of the things that I've talked about doing actually with my coach, and he said some of his clients have done it already, is I've got 5 years of notes from calls. And so, like, I'm going to plug all those notes. They're written, and I'm hoping I can train chat on how to read my writing. I'm pretty sure it'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Um, but I can put 5 years of notes on calls and say, hey, here's what's going on. Reference back some concepts that we've discussed over the last 5 years. And so I think leveraging the relationships you already have, plus leveraging relationships that you might never get, or like you said, they could be dead. Hey, how would Henry Ford handle X, Y, and Z? I mean, there's a lot of like titans of industry that really were very innovative, and so I think having them at your disposal is absolutely incredible. What's a scenario where you've like ran it by and it's been super helpful? Like what's a task that they've been helpful with? Or
So there's a bunch of them that kind of come to mind. One like really simple one, and I'll give you an example. Like sometimes I'll get an email from a customer or something that'll be frustrating because it's like, and I'll give you an example, like something was communicated very clearly and then they were upset that we didn't communicate it to them. It's like my initial reaction is to be like, yes, we did. And that kind of response. And it's kind of like the whole, like you write the email out and then wait till tomorrow to send it type deal, which is great. Also great advice. But like in that situation, you can just like copy and paste and be like, here's what's going on. Run this by my power board. What recommendations how would they recommend handling this? And it's like, because you have these people who all have kind of different personalities, it's like, you're going to get different perspectives on it. And then it's like, cool, have them come to a consensus and help me draft a response for this situation. And again, it's just wild how, again, if you just run it through AI and you say, here's the email, draft a response for me, it's going to do that. It's going to do a very professional emailed response or whatever, but it's just going to be very generic in a way. It's not going to rely on these people who are like, just like amazing business people and stuff. So it just changed that whole dynamic. And I think at a higher level, I'll use it sometimes if I'm trying to make hiring decisions or like personnel decisions about, if somebody's right fit for the job or whatever. And even one thing coming out of the EOS meeting that we're going to be working on is each department's going to be working on like 2026 strategic plans for their departments. And then I'll be putting together like a strategic plan for the whole company. Like that strategic plan for the whole company is definitely something that I'll lean on hard with the power board. So like I'll probably use ChatGPT to help put that together. But before I take it in front of my leadership team, I'll run it through that power board and see what, what changes they would recommend or, um, like if they see any blind spots or anything we're missing. And so it just gives you can use AI is super powerful, but then when you set up something like that power board, it just gives you it's still AI, but it's giving you kind of a different perspective through somebody else's, as if it was through somebody else's lens. Another simple one would be like Alex Hormozy. I think is an amazing marketer and just probably one of the best in the world right now at like marketing and offers. And like you can literally say, hey, act as if you were Alex Hormozy and write me an irresistible offer for X, Y, and Z, and it'll spit it out. It seems pretty accurate. So yeah.
Well, and I think you hit on something that's pretty interesting there that I don't remember us talking about the last time we had an AI conversation of having it obviously having it do tasks and write things and like that's I think most people are doing that now. But I think having it poke holes in your plans, your strategic plan, like blind spots, I think all that is I would call that like a second level task for AI because and especially if you give it a person to come at it from the perspective of. And so I think, in the beginning with AI, it was all about the prompt. And I feel like I haven't heard that as much lately because AI has gotten so much better that like your prompt can almost be worse now, but it still does a pretty good job of figuring out what you really want it to do. But I think giving it a personality or giving it a framework to come from instead of a prompt on every question, assigning it who to be. I think that's the ticket because I've used it at times where I have used it like this is like when I'm working on stuff for church or like for a Bible study and like obviously like that's something where there's vastly different opinions like across the board, so if you ask it to a generic question, it may pull from X or it may pull from Y. And so you give it, hey, I follow these three people. I want you to come at it from their perspective. And that way it's like a double verify that, hey, this information I'm getting at it's accurate and it fits like my perspective and that vein that I want it to come from. Because with anything, there's a lot of different perspectives, and so you've got to feed it the ones that you want. And the other part of that is you don't want like a true confirmation bias. But especially when you're going to prompt it after that, hey, what's wrong with this? What can I do better? What would the other side say? If my customer were reading this email, what's their response going to be? And and you can farther task it and ask the next question, and it really helps you dig deeper and just say, man, is this the best action? Do I need to change it? And I have the same thing with emails where it's like your first email is always, a little rougher or more aggressive than you'd like it to be, and sometimes
Yeah.
you got to tone it back. And man, AI is so useful for things like that because it's sometimes it's difficult. Sometimes it's difficult to take an email and be like, all right, how do I make this 20% less aggressive? And you can take that and you can put it in AI and you can say, hey, I want to be just as firm as my email, but I want them to come off knowing I care about them, X, Y, and Z. And it'll make subtle changes in the language and in the form that it would have taken me all day to figure out how to craft perfectly. And so it's super powerful in that regard for sure.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Another thing kind of on the lines to your notes, I think uploading your notes from your coaching calls would be super powerful. I haven't done this yet in this way, but I've seen a couple of these, or I've seen it recommended twice in the last week. There's a couple companies now that are selling it. They're like either wearables or our EOS implementer had one yesterday that looked like, it looked like a credit card almost, or a little like small wallet. And it was recording the entire meeting. And then that runs it through AI. So it gives you like an entire everything that was talked about in the entire meeting, plus with notes and key takeaways and stuff like that. And then that can get funneled in there for more information. So that's one that like I'll probably look into. I saw another one that like you wear on a necklace and it just like literally all your meetings it records. I had been using like the Otter AI one. And I got away from it because I was doing it specifically. It was like some of these GoBundance calls where, the guys were like, hey, kick that chat bot off of here. I don't want them recording what we're talking about, which I totally understand. But from a business perspective, and I think we talked about this recently, like over communicating. One thing we talked about is like, hey, with our customers and stuff, we need to over communicate because it prevents a lot of these misunderstandings. And so one thing I was thinking about is like that Otter AI. I'm going to start turning that back on. And if we have kind of like budget update meetings or any kind of change order type meetings, like let's run that through the AI and have it summarize what was talked about and send it in a follow-up email so there is no confusion on stuff. And so again, it keeps advancing, but these little kind of tools and things just make, I guess, doing business a little bit not necessarily easier, but just kind of more efficient and helps us be better at it.
Yeah, and I think that's a good challenge for me because I've always kind of looked at that stuff and been like, man, I don't want this thing listening to all. Yeah,
It's listening anyways. It just, you
I
might as well
know.
use it for something good.
That's right. That's right. But I think when you factor it back into the conversation we had a couple calls ago of record keeping, making sure everything's accurate. I mean, I think it's going to be a game changer, but I think it's also going to introduce some pretty interesting things down the road. Like when you think about it from a legal standpoint, like the record keeping that people have the potential to have now is, I mean, it's wild. It's not emails, it's recordings, it's AI summaries.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
good thing that AI is being introduced in like the legal field because I feel like the amount of information that's going to be available, if something ever came to that, is going to be ridiculous,
Yeah.
because of all these tools, the amount of information that's going to have to be sifted through, which is it's a good thing. If it helps keep everybody on track and more accurate, it's going to be great, but it still has to be processed and they still have to do all this stuff. And so that's going to be an interesting development that I'm sure you'll see of, man, we've got 120 hours of meetings with this client over 3 years. And like, how is this going to play into whatever the dispute is or whatever it is? And so I think it's going to be fascinating how that works. And I have seen those before. I've never seen anyone actually use them. And so
Yeah.
I'd be interested to see how well of a job they do. Like,
That was,
how do they work in your opinion?
Yeah, that was the first time that I've seen it. So I'll be curious to see if he sends the notes. He may have already sent them, so I'll have to check. One thing that I just kind of made me think of this while you were talking about it. Like we always talk about, how if you think something, or I think about this, so if we think there's any chance of something becoming a legal issue, like let's just put it in email. That way it's like documented. And I think it's something that we all need to be very aware of that now, if it's a conversation, there's a chance that it could be being documented by one of the Otter AI or one of these wearable things. And so it's just like I think it's good to always strive to like, basically the way you conduct yourself at any time, you might as well plan that you're being recorded or you could be recorded, and you should always conduct yourself in a way that would be totally okay. But I think it's just important for it to realize to now, especially today, like you really could be being recorded and not just like back in the day where it's like a little microphone or something. It's like this thing is actually within seconds spitting out a transcript and able to summarize what was talked about. And so it's just kind of, we have to be very aware of this technology that it's out there, and it's just going to become more and more common.
Well, and I think it's a similar topic related. We actually had a conversation with our guys at our weekly meeting this week of nearly everyone has a Ring doorbell. If they don't have that, they've got other things. And so, just like you said, it's almost like you have to act 100% of the time like you are being recorded. And that's, it's scary, but it also keeps you accountable. But I mean, the amount of, even on like apartment rental units, the amount of people that have a Ring doorbell or have X or have Y. And it's just something to be cognizant of, the conversation you're having when you're waiting for them to open. If you're frustrated at something else in the day or something, and what we've had to really stress to our guys is it's not what you say, it's what other people hear you say. And so, you could be saying something totally innocuous, but they catch 3 words out of the conversation and they turn it into something else. And so it's you've got to really be beyond reproach is probably a really high standard, that you're not totally going to hit all the time, but you've got to take it really seriously because especially in today's legality society. It's easier than ever to bring an action or something like that, and it's something you've got to be cognizant of, especially with tools like AI. I don't know that somebody's done this. I'm sure they have, but I mean, I'm sure you could get pretty far in a court proceeding using AI to represent yourself. You know, I mean, to fill out forms, to process that stuff, and so like the bar to to bring action or make something a legal issue is probably lower than ever because of the availability of AI. And so, doing all you can to protect yourself on the front end is definitely necessary.
Yeah. Cool. How about before we wrap it up, you got any more, I guess, or newer useful ways that you've used AI recently that's worth sharing?
That's a good question. I'm on my other screen. I'm scanning through my latest conversations. I've actually the most interesting ways that I've been using it lately, and I can't remember if we talked about this, is I've used the conversational AI a lot more lately.
Yeah.
Um, of tossing in earbuds, taking a walk, and just having verbal conversations. And so, to me, it's opened up a whole new level of productivity, like on a drive or on a walk or something like that. Um, where I normally I'd listen to a podcast or listen to a book or something like that, but I can have pretty in-depth conversations with AI in the car and accomplish a lot. And so that's kind of been the next level for me. And I don't love it yet. I've done Grok and I've done chat, and it's still not quite like conversational. And so I think it's going to get better and better, but I think that's like an easy thing, especially, you talked early on about in your journey, having a lot of windshield time and doing podcasts. Um, but like when we were down at the beach on vacation, I was taking walks at night and, just for fun, I was having it do research on beach houses and, hey, what would it cost to own this? And how would you do this? And what would be a creative way to finance this? And it's just, it's a really interesting conversation. It's like talking to a really sophisticated person on whatever topic you're talking about. And so the interaction isn't quite there yet, in my opinion, to make it really great, but the information is. And so that's been the biggest thing that I've tried lately is just using that in my free time, getting better at it. And it takes a little getting used to, but I think the conversational part is only going to get better and better.
Nice. Yeah, that was really cool. I talk to it a lot just with the dictate,
Mm-hmm.
just so I don't have to type stuff into it, but I haven't really played much with the one where it's actually you're talking back and forth with it. So I know I need to try that. I should definitely try it. I've got two kind of like simple ones that I've been messing with. So the ChatGPT agents came out like, I don't know, probably 6 months ago, and they were pretty horrible when they first came out. So I hadn't really messed with them too much, but like last, I think Saturday or something, I was kind of playing with that a little bit more where I used one of the agents to update. We use 90.io for our like our US to track our meetings, and it's got all of our US information in there. And we had like a couple pages in there that we hadn't updated from the last meeting. Since the meeting was coming up, I was able to just take the pictures of our notes, upload that and have it summarized, and then use an agent to actually update the software for us. And it took it a little while to work through it. It's just something like we'd been putting off because it's time consuming. Like any one of us could have simply done it, but it was just a little bit time consuming. And so it logged in to our 90.io with those notes and like updated our VTO and stuff. There's a couple like little typos where probably from the bad handwriting that missed some stuff, but it was like 95%, I think. And so, and it was done while I was working on something else. I also had the agent the other night for date night. I had it book reservations for me for dinner. And so like I was on the bike, and so like I could have done it, but I was slow down when I'm on the bike and I'm trying to play with my phone. And so I just kind of asked it to do it and then set the phone down and was able to keep riding while it booked reservations for me. So again, like not a huge thing, but just like one of those helpful little things. So the agents they're not there yet. Like they're not going to replace an employee yet, but they're getting a lot better than they were. So it's something to be kind of aware of and
Well, I
play with a
think, and
little bit.
this is just something I think about a lot. That's awesome. I haven't played with that at all. I'm
Yeah,
definitely going to play
try
with
it.
it.
It's crazy.
But like when you look at how technology has brought us closer to things that were like beyond reach, like I always think about Uber, like to have a car on demand, in the year 2000, you need to be making $1 million a year, like, and
Yeah.
now anybody
Yeah.
has a private car available at any time. Like, to have somebody make a reservation for you, you know, Nobody does that. Yeah, and so to have that capability at the tip of your fingers is just, it is wild, the speed at which society is progressing to
Yeah.
where things that were available to, you know, the absolute upper echelon are now available to virtually everybody with the press of
Yeah.
a button. And so it's really interesting, like the technology and the trickle down effect of that. And so that's just something I think about a lot. But I think that's an awesome. I need to play with I haven't played with agents yet. That's something I need to
Yeah.
do.
They've gotten better. So it's definitely worth, and they can use their own, it has its own web browser. And so you can take it over if it needs, credit card information or personal information, you take it over and you log in information. You'll do that manually, but then you just give it back control and it'll say, like I said, it'll click around. It takes it a while to do it. But it'll get it done. And it's actually getting fairly good at it.
That's really interesting. That's great.
Cool.
What would be like the original topic was kind of about that power broker concept. Like, what would you encourage people to do with that?
I would say to try to create their own power board. So if you've got, I use ChatGPT, you can go in there and create an agent and just ask it, tell them you want to create a board of directors, either a personal or a business board of directors. You call it whatever you want. If you have people in mind that you look up to or respect, you can tell it who you want to use. But if you're not sure, you can just say, hey, I want to create a personal or a business board of directors that can give me advice. Ask me one question at a time, total of 5 questions to help me come up with who my board's going to be. So I just say create that board and save it. And then when you're using ChatGPT for something else, just ask it to run it by your board of directors and see what their input is. And I think the biggest thing when it comes to AI and everything I listen to is it's just spending a little bit of time to use it. Like that's how we're all going to get better at it, is you just got to try to use it for stuff. And the more that you use it, the more you play with it, the better, I think the better you get at it. So it'd be just to try it and try to use it at least once or twice.
That's awesome. Well, I'm listening to that. I'm going to do it. And then just my other little tidbit, I would say try the conversational piece. Try talking to it. Try that out. I think that's going to become better and better. And when you talk about multitasking, like the agent working in the background, I think is a really powerful tool. And AI has gotten better at that in general. It used to be you kind of had to have it open, and now it'll alert you when tasks are done. And so I think that's a pretty powerful change that's happened lately. But the ability to be working on other things and having an intelligent conversation with, you could have it with your your board of directors or your power board, and so
Mm-hmm.
I think that's something I would encourage people to try out as well.
Cool. Well, thanks everybody for joining us. If you enjoy these podcasts or you get something out of it, please don't forget to give us a review, a comment if you have any questions or input, and then share if you've got any friends or if you know anybody you think may get value out of these. Please don't hesitate to share them. And we'll see you guys next time. Thanks.
Thanks.